up, everyone? Tyler DeLuca back here with my takeaways from this past week in women's basketball. And a week, I mean, this happens every time around the holidays where the games slow down just a little bit. But the top games that we did have delivered. We had some fun rivalry matchups. Obviously, UConn Notre Dame being the highlight, but also Iowa and Iowa State was a very fun rivalry game. And I love the Iowa State game because Notre Dame and UConn is a rivalry based off greatness and past success. And because these two teams were always going at it for a national championship at the same time, it naturally became a rivalry. And then beef grew, yada. There's a whole backstory behind it. But ultimately, it's rooted in greatness. While Iowa and Iowa State is rooted in in-state hate. And I love that. I love that from two devout fan bases. But this UConn Notre Dame game. Look, I've been saying about Hannah Hidalgo. I've also spoke on Sarah Strong and the player that she is for UConn, and that I feel like she is an incredible player. I have been waiting for this game. This game had been circled on my calendar, and did it deliver? It sure did. It absolutely did. I mean, to start off with Hannah Hidalgo, I said it before, I'll say it again, there's no conversation that Hannah Hidalgo does not belong in. And I see people kind of saying that as a hot take in ways. I've never thought, even when I was saying that was a hot take. This is a player that was neck and neck with Juju Watkins last year when it comes to being freshman of the year. She had the conference awards. Like, her taking a leap into being a national player of the year is not out of the ordinary. You know, like, this is not a surprise to me. But she's now done it against Paige Beckers. She's now done it against Juju Watkins this season. And the National Player of the Year race is certainly still a race. Obviously, we're so early on in the season. But when we get to the end of this season, assuming that everyone kind of keeps on their same pace, Hannah Hidalgo is going to have a very interesting argument that neither other player can make, in that she beat both of them. But in this game, the three-point shooting from Hannah Hidalgo was ridiculous. She kept finding a new celebration to do after every game. It was incredible. It was so much fun. I think the question now, when you look forward, is with Notre Dame, is how do you perform like this maybe on a more consistent basis? Because they've now beaten 3 top 5 teams, but they've also lost to TCU and Utah, who are both good teams in their own right. But we've also seen what South Carolina did to TCU in Fort Worth. Like, there has to be less variance for Notre Dame. And the way that if they could just bottle what they put into these big games and showing up for these big moments, they could absolutely be the best team in the country. And right now, to me, I think when it comes to the highest peak that a team has reached in their play, no team has reached higher peaks on a more consistent basis in big games than Notre Dame. I still think on a single game basis, maybe UCLA and South Carolina is still probably the highest peak a team has played with the 3-point shooting and defense that UCLA showed in that game. But when Notre Dame has gone against good teams and teams of their caliber, they have rose to the occasion every single time so far this season. And in a non-con where they scheduled very tough, they have rose to the occasion every single time. And at this point, looking at the rest of their schedule, the ACC is not a bad conference by any means, but certainly not the toughest at the Power 4. If you told me Notre Dame runs the table from here going into postseason play, I wouldn't be surprised. But it's a matter of not allowing what happened against TCU, against Utah, to happen again. And how do you limit that variance is what I'm going to be interested in seeing from Notre Dame going forward. For UConn, though, it's an interesting place here for UConn, because obviously the UConn formula has been, let's schedule tough in the non-con. We play in the Big East. There's certainly good teams in the Big East, but definitely not one of the, you're not going to have, a ranked game every weekend, in the Big East. It's just not going to happen. So you load up in the front half of your schedule, and you play your Big East games. They have now coming up. They play Georgetown. They play Iowa State, who might be ranked still by the time they play. That'll just be kind of up to Iowa State, frankly. I feel like, and maybe they might drop out of the rankings after their loss to Iowa. We'll just have to wait and see. They haven't started off fantastically by any means. Audi Crooks did everything against Iowa, but ultimately, like, the big three that Iowa State was kind of supposed to have and does have just hasn't been able to really get clicking. But then Juju Watkins comes into stores. Kiki Iriuffen comes into stores. USC comes into stores. And that, it's not a must-win game for UConn. In the sense of, like, oh, they have to win this game to prove, yada, yada. No. But when it comes to tournament seeding, it might be. It might be a must-win game for them to be a seed that we are used to them being at. And they do have Tennessee in January or February. They also have South Carolina in February. So there are other ranked games left, and obviously the South Carolina one will be a presumably a top ranked matchup. But for UConn going forward, that USC game is one that it feels like when it comes to resume building is going to be massive, because yes, UConn has other ranked wins, but none. I don't think any of those wins were against a top 15 team at the time that they played. And so I just think from a resume perspective, that USC game feels major for them. But from an on the court perspective with UConn, the offense just it never felt easy to me. Paige Becker's made plays that looked easy on an individual basis, but I think that's the problem, is that this is a very, very talented team that obviously was missing AZ Fudd, which is a big part of it, but it never came off as easy at any point, and certainly part of that is to do with Notre Dame and the defense that they're able to play. Sonia Citron from just continues to raise her draft stock with performances, just making it difficult for star players, whether that be Paige, whether that be Juju. We've seen it now twice, and the Sonia stock just keeps rising as a premier 3-and-D prospect going into the WNBA this next season. But for UConn, how do you make life easier, and how can you figure out how to not rely on Paige as much, where you still have her producing in the same way, but it's not she can maybe do it in different ways, because the playmaking, I mean, she has 2 assists on the game, and the playmaking certainly is a skill of Paige's, but it wasn't systemically in this game utilized. Like, you saw Paige in the corner a lot and coming off a ball screen, and then just kind of having to go to work from there. And Sarah Strong also, like, was unable to get rolling in the first half due to foul trouble. That second half, I was like, okay, she's kind of getting going. What's going on here? And I was like, Notre Dame might need to get that fourth foul on Sarah Strong ASAP, because I don't know if Notre Dame has a direct answer for Sarah Strong if she gets going. She didn't get fully rolling in this game, but obviously Sarah Strong is a player that I am high on. It is a player that can be a difference maker for this UConn team, and I fully expect to be a difference maker for this UConn team. But I was going into this game, I was interested in seeing how does Notre Dame handle Sarah Strong, and a lot of that had to do with the foul trouble, but also they had bigs of their own producing. Leatu King was fantastic in this game with 16 points. Like, this Notre Dame team has a much stronger, especially with the players that they still have out with injury, like a Maddie Westbell that is going to be coming back. The foundation down low in this team is much stronger than I think I probably had anticipated. In comparison to the perimeter play. Obviously, so much of the talk goes to Olivia Miles and Hannah Hidalgo, rightfully so. But the inside play was very, very impressive. Kate Koval with the defense has also been a very nice discovery for this Irish team. So now, going forward for each of these teams, I think UConn, it's about taking these next 3 games, Georgetown, Iowa State, USC, and if you win all 3 of those games, obviously you're feeling fantastic. I think if you drop the USC game, there's going to be questions about the top opponents and everything, and that really won't be able to be answered again until you play South Carolina at South Carolina, which is not a game that I want to be answering questions in. And then for Notre Dame, it's just about figuring out the variance and how can you make the game that you play against the top teams be the game that you play where you blow out lesser teams. How do you figure that out? But right now, Notre Dame, when they're playing these best teams, is absolutely at worst a top 3 team in the country. whether it be Texas, USC, UConn, whenever they play these top teams, they look at worst a top 3 team in the country. And absolutely a title contender. But can they stay out of their own way against the lesser teams? That's what we got to find out. But both of these teams are obviously very, 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 very good and are going. I'd be shocked to see anything less than Elite Eight for both of these teams come March. So it's just going to be interesting to figure out how we get there. What is the dialogue like? What is the conversation? What is the momentum? There's a lot of questions and answers between now and March, but both of these teams I fully expect to be there. And this was a great game. The energy was there. The WNBA players, all the Irish alumni were there. It was electric. It was awesome. 2 of the best players in the country going head-to-head, and Hidalgo and Paige Beckers. Like, this is what Prime Women's Basketball is all about, and this is what this rivalry is all about between Notre Dame and UConn. So it was a fantastic game. I can't wait to see what these 2 teams look like going forward and what we find out about them. But let me know what you thought about this game, and what do you feel like are the biggest points going forward for both Notre Dame and UConn, and I'll see you next time.